and it's not enough to sustain, right? It's like if I'm desperately seeking approval and I get it from Donna, as soon as I look away, I need it again.
It's a 2-second little thing.
It's very short-lived, and then the whole process is just repeated. Let me tell you about one of the biggest breakthroughs that my wife had, and I think it'll really help, and it's based on all of this. She was doing an exercise one time. It was in a seminar, and we were both there. I don't remember if we were both attending or participating. And the whole exercise was on reframing something that was painful from the past. And so she went back to this memory when she was 5 or 6 years old. Her dad was teaching her how to ride a bike, and then he left, and then she taught herself how to ride the bike. You know, she completed and taught herself how to ride the bike. And she went into into her house, into the kitchen. She was all excited. Mommy, 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 I taught myself how to ride a bike. And her mom, who was doing something in the kitchen, she just turned around with this look of total irritation. Like, can't you see I'm busy? And she was crushed, because she was looking for all of these, and she got none of them. And she actually kind of got energetically slapped, right? Yeah. And so this was the memory that she had. And the purpose of this particular exercise was, how can you take that memory and make it mean something different? And I don't remember what the label was for her. It was some kind of lack of approval, but that wasn't the word. There was one word.
Disappointment?
Disappointment, that's it. Thank you. It was disappointment. So as hard as she tried, she could not make this mean anything other than disappointment. And so then she came back. This is one of the only times that she actually came back and asked me to coach her, right? Because that's always difficult. Like, am I your coach? Am I your husband? Am I your friend? I don't know. What do I do? But she said, I need some help with this. And this is the first time I had this experience too. So this is a big breakthrough for me from a coaching perspective, just an awareness perspective. And I was trying to help her find a different label. And she just couldn't. And I had never had that happen where somebody couldn't reframe it like that. She just couldn't. And then this huge aha hit me, and I said, you know what? I think it was disappointment. And she looked at me like, that's not what we're doing here. Like, you're not supposed to confirm it, right? And I said, but I think it was disappointment. And then I said, but whose disappointment was it? And I said, what were you looking for your mom? What were you looking for from your mom? And she said, approval. And I said, does your mom have that to give?
Yes.
And this was all, like, I was watching myself say it as much as I was saying it. And it was, when I asked that question, have you ever seen like a cartoon where a character changes colors,
Yeah.
and the color like goes from the head and then
Seeps through the body.
that's what I watched. I saw all of this irritation with her mom just go, wow, and just gone. Because in that moment, what she realized is the thing that she's been looking for from her mom the whole time, her mom doesn't have. Her mom does not have it to give it. She doesn't have approval. And her mom lives in disappointment. But disappointment in who? Herself. So Sybil read the disappointment correctly. The problem was she internalized it as though mom was disappointed in her. And in reality, that's just the suit that mom has on all the time. It's called a disappointment suit, right? And so, the analogy I always give is, have you ever been at a restaurant or a buffet or something and you wanted chocolate ice cream? And you go there, and they have an ice cream machine, and you go to the ice cream machine, and you pull a little thing down, but it's vanilla. Have any of you gotten really mad at the machine and maybe punched it or kicked it and you gotta make chocolate? No, because that's all that's available here is vanilla. Chocolate, it's just not here. So when we can understand that, I would say most of the time, the things that we're wanting from others it doesn't reside there. It doesn't live there. It's not available to you. Then the only place you get it is inside, right? So that's where all of this is an internal game. And when we move from external to internal, meaning external is when we need other people to give us all of these things, we are always going to be emotionally unstable. Always. But when we are the source, we are going to be emotionally unflappable from others. Other people can't knock us off our game. We can still do it to ourselves, which is what we do all the time, right? But we've got to cut off this need for the external source of all of this stuff.
Wow.
And that's where you give to give and don't need the acknowledgement coming back, right? You offer just for the offering's sake, not for what they're going to say or do. And that is such a gigantic shift. And this is one of the ways to cut off what we talked about a little bit ago, that fear of success. Part of the fear of success and being scared of people joining and quitting is when you need somebody else to validate your leadership. Somebody else to validate your worthiness. As soon as nobody else needs to validate it, not only do they not need to validate it, they couldn't validate it. So even when people are telling you, and I'd be curious what your take is on this, because I would imagine you've made that shift. Maybe you always lived that way, but when you don't need the validation from other people, they can give it to you and it won't be that big of a deal. You can be just purely happy for somebody else and not have it fill up your pride, you know? And so an authentic story about me is for the first 2 years of my career, I wanted the external validation. I was still totally external. I wanted people to come to my events and say, I'm the reason that they got into a Cadillac. I'm the reason that they did this. They became a national. They didn't kill themselves. I'd heard a bunch of other stories about that from other trainers. I wanted that, and I wanted it to be screamed from the top of a mountain so that I could feel good about myself, so that other people could feel good about me. And Jack is one of my mentors, and I always wanted Jack to validate me, like, you know, that I'm good enough. And I had an experience, I think I mentioned it the other day, where this woman at one of my seminars ran out and demanded that I pay her back, right? Well, right before that happened, during the week, I had this shift, and I realized that my value is not determined by whether you, and I'll talk about all of you right now, my value is not determined by whether you take these tools and use them. We're going to give everything we can, right? We're going to give everything we can. If you go home and don't use them, this might sound really harsh, that's not going to crush me.
That's right.
Because your decision not to use the tools does not diminish my value. And that might sound harsh, it might sound really shallow, but you know what? It helps me retain my value.
There you go.
And my value isn't determined by anybody else's decisions anymore. So I made that shift internally, and I realized my job is to give the tools. Your job is to use the tools, right? And when I made that shift, what that lady didn't affect me. That's why I was able to read her 20-page email, and I'm like, this lady really hates this dude named Sean Smith. Wow.
But in turn, by you having that value,